I have the best poll numbers I've ever had. I mean, I just solved 8 wars and a ninth is coming. I believe Russia, Ukraine will happen. For 2028. Yeah, for 2028, they're a very good people. Well, we have great people. Well, I don't have to get into that, but we have one of them standing right here. We have JD, obviously. The vice president is great. I think Marco's great. I think, I'm not sure if anybody would run against those two.
Now, let me just lay out how unique Trump's situation is right now. He's in a real tough spot. Honestly, it's like he's caught in a squeeze play that he can't manipulate or wiggle out of. No matter how powerful he tries to be or how many staunch allies he has around him in the White House. On one side, we've got the U.S. Constitution and the federal courts, which are making it crystal clear that his time in office has a set-in date, January 2029. That's the deadline. And it's not budging. The 22nd Amendment limits him to 2 terms.
Will he or won't he? That has been the parlor game in Washington ever since those Trump 2028 hats appeared on the Resolute desk. Those hats fueling speculation that Donald Trump would seek a 3rd political term, even though it's barred in the Constitution. A parlor game while the nation grapples with rising health care costs, inflation, and possibly millions who could lose their food stamps in just the coming days.
No hidden loopholes, no fine prints that allow for exceptions, not even if things get sticky. And despite whatever jokes or hints he throws out at rallies about wanting to go for a 3rd term, experts from all backgrounds are on the same page. Trump does not have a serious legal avenue to extend his presidency past that date. The courts would straight up shut it down. The Constitution is pretty clear-cut about its rules, especially when it comes to how long a president can serve. Trying to stretch a presidency beyond that set deadline is just asking for trouble. And any attempt would likely get shot down in court faster than you can blink. You've got this solid constitutional barrier that even someone as powerful as the president can't get around, climb over, or find some sneaky legal loophole to bypass.
What exactly the 22nd Amendment says, it says no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. There's no exceptions if you say the election is rigged or if those 2 terms aren't consecutive. There really is pretty cut and dry on this, so much so that Speaker Mike Johnson this week said that he didn't see there to be any way that President Trump could run again.
But here's where it gets intriguing and a bit precarious for Trump. There are folks in Congress who aren't just going to sit around waiting for the end of his term in January of 2029. They're eager to see him gone, and they want him out before that term wraps up. It's incredible that this is happening, but here we are. It's not just chatter on cable news or social media antics meant to grab attention and rake in some donations. They're actually bringing impeachment resolutions right to the floor of the United States House of Representatives.
We've got 2 articles, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. We're used to hearing obstruction of justice. This is obstruction of Congress. Can you walk us through the 2 articles and tell us what they mean?
Absolutely. Abuse of power, Democrats say, has to do with the president's attempts to use his office for personal gain contrary to the national interest.
Following the official constitutional path, Representative Al Green from Texas has already put forth a formal resolution to impeach Donald Trump for abuse of power. Standing before his colleagues, cameras rolling, he made it abundantly clear that Trump needs to be impeached, convicted, and kicked out of office before his term ends. Green made some serious accusations, including that Trump called for the execution of 6 Democratic lawmakers. He pointed out how Trump has been stirring up a climate of political violence, threatening judges and public servants everywhere.
There are people who believe that you ought to be impeached, you ought to be convicted, and you ought to be removed. I am one of the people. I am one of the people. We, the people of the removal movement, believe that you, sir, should be an example of what a righteous government will do when a person who would subvert the Constitution has slithered his way into office.
Green insisted that impeachment is the only way to send a strong message to anyone who thinks they can do what Trump is doing, that this country won't tolerate such actions under any circumstances. This isn't a viral tweet meant for engagement or a press conference designed to dominate the news cycle only to be forgotten by morning. This is a serious constitutional action being taken in the very chamber that holds the exclusive power to impeach the president. So when you consider what Trump is facing, the contrast is really striking. On one hand, The law pretty much says his time in office has a set expiration date that he cannot alter no matter what tricks he pulls.
That it's pretty clear that there's really not a way. I don't expect, this to be the last of this conversation, though. Once you sort of cede this territory to say that, hey, I'm not going to run again, you almost instantaneously become a lame duck, even in that second term. Usually presidents wait until it's after the midterms where they sort of lose some of their political capital. So I imagine that President Trump will perhaps float this again in the near future.
The 22nd Amendment is crystal clear, and the courts are fully prepared to uphold it. There's nothing Trump can do to change that reality, regardless of how many times he muses about a third term or jokes about staying in power indefinitely. His loyal supporters might nod along, but the law is the law. On the other hand, Congress is working actively to make that end date come even sooner through this formal impeachment process. January 2029 is creeping up on us.
Today, in service to our duty to the Constitution and to our country, the House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing 2 articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors. The first article is for abuse of power.
And it seems like some members of Trump's own administration are trying to fast-track his exit before that clock runs out on its own. It's a bit like a double-edged sword, really, a trap he's caught in. There he is, right in the center as the pressure builds from both sides, watching the walls close in with no clear escape plan in sight. What makes this situation even more compelling now than at any other time during his presidency? The push for impeachment isn't just based on hypothetical scenarios of what Trump might do in the future. It's rooted in tangible actions he's taken during his current term with the power he wields right now. We're talking about the unauthorized military raid in Venezuela that he launched without Congress's knowledge or approval. Then there's the consideration of a massive military strike on Iran, labeled by a retired 4-star general as formidable and potentially capable of ending regimes. Let's not forget the $600 million in health funding he pulled from blue states as retaliation for opposing his immigration policies. He even tried to meddle in state elections by threatening to cut federal funding to states that wouldn't alter their voting rules. There's also the incident where his own top officials accidentally leaked active war plans to a journalist in a group chat. And looming over him is the classified documents case tied to the Mar-a-Lago investigation with charges under the Espionage Act. Each of these incidents adds more weight to the impeachment argument being pushed by Al Green and other Democrats on the House floor. Plus, thanks to the constitutional term limits, even if impeachment doesn't pan out, Trump's time in office isn't going to last forever. His days are numbered regardless of what happens in Congress. So, in this video, I'll break down both angles of this intense situation, diving into the constitutional barriers that keep any dream of a third term at bay, no matter how often he brings it up, alongside the impeachment efforts striving to end his presidency even before that limit is reached. Let's dive in. To kick things off, I think it's crucial to discuss the constitutional aspect because a lot of folks hear him mention a third term and honestly aren't quite sure how to process it. So here's the deal. When it comes to the whole idea of a third term for the president, it's honestly hard to believe he even brought it up. Some folks might think it's just his way of entertaining the crowd at rallies. But the truth is, whether he's joking or being serious doesn't change anything. According to constitutional scholars and legal experts from both sides, the law is pretty straightforward. The 22nd Amendment, which was ratified in 1951, clearly states that no one can be elected to the presidency more than twice. That means 2 terms, 8 years max, and there are no loopholes or crafty tricks that can be used to get around that. There aren't any hidden escape routes within the amendment for emergencies or any other special situations. A sitting president can't extend their term through executive action or get the Congress to pull a fast one for them. If there was ever a thought about changing this limit, it would take a lengthy and complicated process, a full constitutional amendment. That means we'd need 2/3 of both the House and the Senate on board, and then 3/4 of all 50 state legislators to ratify it. That's a tall order, and it's the hardest legal pathway in the entire American system. Plus, right now there's absolutely no interest in giving any president, especially this one, a third term especially considering all the tension in courts and Congress about how much power he has even during his second term. Legal analysts who've looked closely at Trump's Supreme Court cases and his overall legal situation have been very clear about this issue, leaving no room for anyone to cling to false hopes or misunderstand the facts. A thorough legal analysis published in January of 2026 pointed out that despite all the talk about a third term, there's no real legal way for him to stay in office past January of 2029. It's honestly hard to believe he keeps talking about a third term, especially when he knows, and his lawyers certainly know, that it's completely impossible under the law. Yet here we are, and every time Trump casually brings up the idea of staying in office beyond 2029, whether at a rally or during a media chat, there's a method to his madness. He's testing the waters, pushing the limits of what his supporters are ready to accept and defend. The talk about a third term serves a really important political strategy for him, even if it'll never hold up in a courtroom. He's working to normalize the idea of a president who doesn't want to step down when their time is up, making term limits feel less like a constitutional must-have and more like a suggestion. Now, let's think about the implications of trying to sidestep the 22nd Amendment. Any attempts to circumvent it would be an immediate target in the federal courts, and no judge across the country would even think twice about striking it down. Legal experts are clear about this. The federal judiciary is not going to let Trump skate by on violating a constitutional amendment that's been respected for 75 years. Regardless of any concerns about political influences on the judiciary these days, there's no way any federal judge would rule that the president can just ignore a part of the Constitution that's so straightforward and clear-cut. This isn't a gray area where interpretations can differ. It's a bright line that every single judge, from the newbies to the justices on the Supreme Court, would uphold without a moment of consideration. It's honestly hard to grasp how deep the political divisions have become. On one hand, you have folks who see impeachment as a necessary step to safeguard democracy from slipping into authoritarianism. But there are others who view it as a frustrating hurdle being thrown in front of their leader by opponents trying to halt his significant work. This dynamic, regardless of whether it ever leads to a serious attempt for a third term that goes through the courts, really poses a threat to the long-term health of our democratic institutions. It shakes public confidence in the constitutional boundaries that have ensured a smooth handover of presidential power for over 230 years. You start to see everyday people questioning if the basic rules of our democracy should still apply when the leader they support is the one facing these restrictions. It opens the door to a set of circumstances and sets a political example that future leaders might find easier to dismiss. Those leaders might be less concerned about adhering to democratic norms and more inclined to act on what Trump only ever mentioned as an idea. Now, shifting gears to the push for impeachment, it's clear that while the Constitution firmly states Trump's presidency must end by January 29th in 2029, there are congressional members actively trying to speed that timeline up. On December 10th in 2025, Representative Al Green officially introduced House Resolution 939, aiming to impeach Donald Trump over abuse of power. The charges he detailed were quite striking, showcasing both gravity and clarity. Green accused Trump of calling for the execution of 6 Democratic members of Congress who, like him, serve in the same institution. He also pointed to an ongoing culture of political violence that's genuinely putting lawmakers, judges, and public servants across the nation at serious risk. Rather than brushing these off as typical political banter or the standard disagreement seen today, Green framed them as serious abuses of presidential power that deemed Trump too dangerous to occupy the Oval Office for the rest of his term. Then on January 9th in 2026, Green made a strong statement on the House floor that left no ambiguity about his stance. He firmly stated that Trump should be impeached, convicted, and removed from office. And he did so without any hesitation or softening of the message. This declaration was made part of the official record of the United States Congress, which means it's going to be preserved for future generations to look back on and reflect upon the history of this presidency. What really struck me was his perspective on why impeachment is so important, not just for the current moment, but for the future as well. He framed it not just as a reaction to Trump's specific actions, but as a crucial warning to anyone who might try to pull similar stunts in the future. Essentially, he said that impeachment serves as a necessary signal that the American government won't tolerate authoritarian behavior. If there are no repercussions for Trump's actions, and he finishes his term without facing any serious consequences offered by the Constitution, it sets a troublesome precedent for future presidents. They'll think they can get away with the same behavior politically speaking. Conversely, if Congress steps in, progresses with the impeachment, and it actually leads to conviction and removal, that sends a much stronger message about what the limits of presidential power really are in the United States. Now, here's where it gets particularly intriguing. The interaction between the constitutional term limit and the current impeachment efforts creates quite a bit of pressure on Trump from different angles. Since Trump already can't run for president again, he's essentially a lame duck, and everyone in Washington knows it. This reality means his influence over his own party members is dwindling month by month as they start to think about their own political futures rather than cling to his agenda or personal survival. The stakes change. Consequently, it becomes less politically risky for Republicans to break away from him on important votes, which in turn makes the potential for impeachment a bit more feasible than it might have initially seemed. Right now, the Republicans are in charge of the House, which makes it pretty tough for impeachment articles to get through. But looking ahead to the midterms in 2026, if the Democrats take control, impeachment could actually happen. Then there's this twist that doesn't seem to be on most people's radar. The moment Trump steps down, whether that's in 2029 or if he's removed sooner, he loses his presidential immunity and becomes a regular citizen again. That means he could be facing criminal charges, whether it's about the classified documents case or the signal leak, plus any new investigations that pop up. Everything becomes fair game the second he's no longer the president. So, this pressure he's feeling isn't just about politics. It's a matter of his personal legal safety. Trump is well aware that every day he stays in office is another day he avoids prosecution. Now, let's break down what this double squeeze means for our country moving forward. It's really telling about where we stand as a nation, especially in February of 2026. Right now, Donald Trump holds one of the most powerful positions in the world. With the largest military and control over the executive branch of one of the most significant governments in history, he wields an incredible amount of influence. Yet, despite all that power, he's actually quite constrained. Bigger forces, more permanent than any one person's wishes or ambition, are boxing him in. The Constitution makes it clear that his presidency wraps up no later than January of 2029. There's nothing he can do to push that timeline, no matter how often he talks about a third term or how much he tests his supporters' limits. That deadline is a solid wall built into the very foundation of American democracy, and it's not budging for anyone, Trump, future presidents, or anyone else trying to challenge it. On another front, members of Congress are actively working to cut his presidency even shorter than that fixed deadline. They're filing formal impeachment resolutions and giving speeches on the floor, arguing that his behavior during his second term has shown a consistent pattern of abuse and lawlessness, and that removal from office is the right thing to do. And here's the crucial part. The idea of term limits is vital here beyond just the fact that a two-term president can't run for a third term. The political landscape is shifting significantly, particularly with the implications of the 22nd Amendment. It not only stops Trump from running again in 2028, but also alters the dynamics of his presidency in ways many people might not pick up on right away. When a president can't seek re-election, their power over their party diminishes.